point of 2021.
Well, one of the big questions that has gripped the national conversation has been one over land, and certainly this conversation is not unique to South Africa. After 28 years of independence, Namibia is still trying to address land reform in that country. A new political movement there has also been formed, likened to the EFF, and is promising to serve the needs of the people. While our very own checkpoints in Gebile Mabuse set out different parts of the continent, really interrogating in Gebile what the land question means for different parts of the continent. And I'm absolutely just, you know, I can't wait to hear and to see what we can expect from Checkpoint in the next month or so. But perhaps give us an idea of what you've been able to unearth.
Well, Kathy, it's been an absolutely fascinating journey, a fascinating project. I really wish camera person Ashley Market was here, who traveled with me through the continent to give you his side of the story, because it was just eye-opening. It was fascinating. Land is a huge issue all around the world, but specifically on the African continent because of our colonial past. So we went in West Africa, we went to Ghana, where we focused specifically on the need for urban land. Ghana is a quickly urbanizing country, and in the capital city, Accra, there is a shortage of land, and it's become so expensive that a lot of people actually cannot afford to stay in places like Osu in the heart of Accra. In Tanzania, we focus mainly on the nationalization of land. In Tanzania, the land is owned by the government and it can lease it to whomever it pleases. And we went very close to the Serengeti National Park. A lot of people will know about it because it's very popular. But there the Maasai live, and you know, they're a pastoral people. And the law in Tanzania recognizes their right to roam and to graze their cattle everywhere. But there's this clash between individual, mainly foreign companies that the government is leasing land to, particularly a hunting license that was given close to the Serengeti border, where the Maasai are basically being uprooted from there because people who have that hunting license do not want them there. And then you mentioned Namibia earlier. That is the show that we're going to be broadcasting tonight at 8:30. Namibia was interesting because they have very similar issues to South Africa. You know, most of Southern Africa, Zimbabwe, South Africa, Namibia, we share, you know, similar pasts. And in Namibia, you know, when you do your research before you go out onto these stories, which is why it's so important to be on the ground speaking to people, you get this rosy picture of Namibia, that their land reform policy has flourished. The government reports that you read, they say that they've reached 62% of their target to buy land and resettle people. But when you look at the finer details, you realize that they actually have only resettled 2%. 2%. Of the people, that they actually settled. And what's going on in Namibia is that in the past 28 years, they've made so many mistakes. They have dumped poor people with absolutely no resources, very similar to South Africa, with goats on faraway lands, and basically told them to, you know, see to finish. And these people have not managed to make these farms productive. So what has happened is they're now changing their criteria of choosing candidates for land resettlement, and they're more focusing now on a middle-class commercial black farmer. One expert said to me, almost every cabinet minister in Namibia has land today. I put this to the land minister, who himself has a commercial farm, and this is how he responded to my question. Let's take a listen.
A person from an informal settlement, put him there and hope that he will succeed to farm. We would like to resettle people who will really make a significant contribution to the GDP.
How do you respond to those who resent the fact that you're a minister, you can look after yourself, but you're benefiting from land reform, and that land reform should actually be benefiting the poorest the most?
If you give a farm, a very expensive farm, for example, to a poor person, how will he run it?
And of course, Nkepile, this draws on a broader conversation around how ultimately some of the land reform processes that are undertaken end up benefiting the elite and not necessarily going to the people that need it the most. Now, in terms of South Africa, we are often accused of being very inward looking, you know, thinking that we're a pariah of sort. When you draw the parallels around our own situation and what you've seen in Namibia, what you've seen in Ghana and Tanzania, what do you think are the lessons we can be taking from some of these countries?
People need to take charge of the land question. They need to speak out. We have almost, as citizens, outsourced this land thing to governments and politicians. They tell us, this is the way that we're going to go, and if it doesn't work, who suffers? It's the people at the end of the day. And I think what this does is it tells the series on ENCA every Thursday, what it will do, it will force South Africans to start thinking very critically about land, what returning the land means to them, because it means different things to different people. South Africa is an urbanized population. We're about almost 66% urbanized. So we need to talk about urban land. People need to be speaking out about what they want and what's going to suit them, and stop allowing politicians to dictate what the solutions are to their problems, because we've seen failures across the continent because politicians implement policies that they think will work and then they don't work. And another thing is it's very rarely measured. I've come back from Namibia. I don't know. There's no measurement of how successful some of these farms are. The minister says to me, oh, you're giving me examples of disasters. Some people have succeeded, but where are they? Where are the numbers? There is no tracking. The minister himself doesn't know who has been successful and who has failed, because they haven't tracked anything in the past 28 years.
One of the other questions that's often asked when people talk about land is, what do people want land for? So you want land, what are you going to do with it? Is it for agriculture? Are you going to set up shopping centers? And that's one of the big questions that South Africans are still grappling with and need to interrogate. But as far as agriculture is concerned, and where land reform has taken place, what has been the result for some of the case studies you looked at?
Look, it cannot be a one-size-fits-all solution, because not everybody is going to be a successful farmer, and not everybody wants to farm. But what happens with politicians is they feel that they can just dictate to the poor what the best solution is to them. So in Namibia, for example, you have poor people being sent to faraway lands on the borders of Namibia where they absolutely cannot farm. The land is not conducive for farming. And when they fail, the government says, oh, well, you know, the people always want handouts. So when it comes to agricultural land, we really need to identify those sectors in society, those people, those communities. There are communities that can farm. We have been a farming people. So there are communities that need to be identified, that need that land, that can produce on that land. And then solutions need to be really catered for those communities. There are people who want urban land, and that's a right as well. And solutions need to be catered for those people as well. But people need to be outspoken. They need to tell their political leaders what they want, and the politicians should be implementing what the people want, instead of politicians telling people what should be done and what shouldn't be done, because they're failing.
Are the people that you found as outspoken?
No.
As
across Africa, we've outsourced a lot of things to politicians, our lives to politicians. They come up with the solutions, they implement them, and when they fail, we say, oh, we'll vote for another politician. But most politicians are the same. They mainly interested in themselves, and they serve themselves, and they implement policies that they think are right. So I think we need to be, as an African people, more outspoken and more confident about the power that we have over the politicians. They need our votes at the end of the day, don't they?
Those who have spoken to Nkepile, what have they had to say?
You know, it's been very few successes. I must be very honest. When I spoke to ordinary people, you speak to a minister, and he told me that on his farm, his farm is double the value that he bought it for. So he's been successful. But you speak to a farm worker who was given a farm and 19 goats, and they all died because they were living in appalling conditions, and her children couldn't go to school. It was in the middle of nowhere. They didn't have homes, and that's a disaster. So I found in the 3 countries that I've been to problems that can be solved, but I don't know if the solutions are being sought from the people, because they know what's good for them.
All right. And of course, people can expect to see everything that you've put together for us in the next month of June, coming up on Checkpoint.
Every Thursday at 8:30 on ENCA.
And the repeats?
I have no idea.
We'll try and double check
I
that.
hope everybody watches every Thursday so that we don't have to repeat.
All right, sure. Every Thursday at 8:30.
Exactly.
Every Thursday, 8:30, the
On
land
ENCA.
question right here on ENCA. Nkepile Mabuse is going to be exploring it further, and as